2,100 families will sign a petition demanding improved social welfare services for children with disabilities and special needs. For the news, stay tuned. Parliamentary elections will be held on June 28th. New election legislation temporarily suspends the residential registry of citizens 60 days prior to the election day. The General Authority for State Registration will temporarily stop residence registration on April 29th.
Citizens who are relocating are advised to apply to their new district office for residence registration prior to the temporary suspension. Under the Parliament's new electoral framework, 78 out of 126 seats will be filled through majoritarian representation and 48 through proportional representation. 13 electoral constituencies have been defined, with 7 covering the provinces and 6 in Ulaanbaatar. The constituencies were determined based on regional development goals, province and district population size, administrative and territorial unit distribution, constituency size and location, consensus with parliament and political parties, and that administrative units in the constituency must be homogeneous in territory with shared borders. The approved amendments to the election law were informed by a comprehensive analysis of the country's population and the number of voting age citizens by province, capital, Som district, and BAC, as reported by the General Authority of State Registration as of November 30th of 2023. The electoral constituencies for Mongolia's 2024 elections are expected to result in a fair and representational electoral process.
To mitigate centralization in Ulaanbaatar city and promote migration to rural areas, the Mongolian government is addressing 4 key challenges: citizens' living environments, workplace issues, healthcare accessibility, and children's education.
For instance, constructing a substantial number of rental apartments within local areas and offering discounted rents to individuals relocating from Ulaanbaatar are essential steps. The Mongolian government has outlined plans to develop 300,000 apartments in these local areas. Additionally, they have implemented measures such as reducing the mortgage loan rate to 3% in local regions and allocating 50% of loans to these areas. As of March 2024, loans totaling 128,491 million Mongolian tugruks have been disbursed to 1,465 borrowers across provinces and localities. Furthermore, as part of the decentralization strategy outlined in the second resolution, loans are being provided at 1% interest rate to support enterprises transitioning from Ulaanbaatar to local regions. As of March 2024, Bayahongor, Qofsonbor, Orkhon, and Khuvsgul provinces have collectively received 1.3 billion Mongolian tugruks in loans, benefiting 4 enterprises.
Despite international conventions advocating for the rights of children with disabilities and special needs, Mongolia grapples with significant hurdles in implementing legal policies aimed at protecting this vulnerable group. In this context of Mongolia's legal framework, while there exist laws and policies designed to safeguard the rights of children with disabilities, the effective implementation of these measures remains lacking.
The Soft NGO, an organization advocating for the rights of children with disabilities in Mongolia, has rallied together 2,100 families to sign a petition demanding improved social welfare services. The petition, to be submitted to the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, highlights the pressing issues faced by families of children with disabilities in accessing essential support and services. Among the key grievances outlined in the petition are the poor accessibility to social welfare services, the lack of quality physical therapy, and the inadequate provision of psychological and mental support for parents. Additionally, families cite the financial burden of expensive medical treatments and necessary utensils as significant challenges they encounter in caring for their children with disabilities. The bringing together of such a significant number of families underscores the urgency in addressing these issues and ensuring that children with disabilities and their families receive the necessary support they need to thrive. The Himnandan South non-governmental organizations' advocacy efforts have shed light on the systemic barriers that still hinder the full inclusion and well-being of children with disabilities in Mongolian society. The petition serves as a powerful reminder to action for the government to prioritize the rights and needs of children with disabilities and their families.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol on Monday doubled down on the government's plan to increase the medical school admission quota by 2,000. Yoon began by apologizing to South Korean people for inconveniencing them in the current clash between the government and doctors, and went on to criticize doctors' collective strike action by calling it a grave threat to society, and said the country does not have a margin for repeated failure to carry out medical reform.
The government's medical reform is to create an environment in which South Korean people can get treatments wherever they live and no matter what kind of disease they have, by strengthening essential medical service and regional medical service. To do so, we need more doctors. If the country cannot increase the number of doctors without doctors' permission, I have to ask doctors whether people's lives are worth only that much to them. Dear citizens, medical service is directly related to people's lives. Collective action by some of the doctors is a grave threat to our society. For the past 27 years, none of the previous administrations has managed to carry out medical reform and quota hike, which 90% of South Korean people support. Previous administrations had fought 9 times and lost 9 times, and this strengthened doctors' medical cartel. The country does not have a margin for repeated failure to carry out medical reform.
About 12,000 interns and medical residents have faced impending suspensions of their licenses over their refusal to end their strikes, which have caused hundreds of cancelled surgeries and other treatments at their hospitals. They oppose the government's plan to increase the country's medical school admission cap by 2/3, saying schools can handle such a steep increase in students and that it would eventually hurt South Korea's medical services. But officials say more doctors are urgently needed because South Korea has a rapidly aging population and its doctor-to-population ratio is one of the lowest in the developed world.
Hours after South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's public address on doctors, the Korean Medical Association released a statement saying it was disappointed by Yoon doubling down on the medical school quota hike plan.
During a Korean Medical Association news conference, Public Relations Chief Kim Sang-in said he watched the public address, hoping to see a breakthrough in the ongoing conflict between the government and doctors.
Today, at 11 a.m., President Yoon Suk-yeol addressed the nation. Every South Korean person and 120,000 doctors watched the address, hoping to see a breakthrough in the ongoing conflict between the government and doctors. But I didn't see any change from the previous stance. Because I had high hopes, the disappointment was even greater.
Kim also said in the statement that he is frustrated with Yoon repeating the 2,000 figure instead of shifting his focus on other problems that can be solved with a little interest and investment. About 12,000 medical interns and residents in South Korea have been on strike for 6 weeks, causing hundreds of canceled surgeries and other treatments at university hospitals. In support of their action, many senior doctors at their teaching schools have also submitted resignations, though they haven't stopped treating patients. Officials say they want to raise the yearly medical school cap by 2,000 from the current 3,058 to create more doctors to deal with the country's rapidly aging population. Doctors countered that schools can't handle such an abrupt increase in students and that it would eventually hurt the country's medical services. But critics say doctors, one of the best paid professions in South Korea, are simply worried that the supply of more doctors would result in lower future incomes.
The Open Arms ship, part of a convoy consisting of 3 vessels carrying 400 tons of essential supplies, including food, was spotted off the southern coast of Gaza on Monday. This convoy, accompanied by a barge, departed from a port in Cyprus on Saturday.
The supplies on board are sufficient to prepare over 1 million meals, comprising items such as rice, pasta, flour, legumes, canned vegetables, and proteins, as reported by the World Central Kitchen charity. Additionally, the shipment included dates traditionally consumed to break the fast during Ramadan. Cyprus Foreign Minister Konstantinos Kombos announced on Monday that the ships were nearing Gaza and had received permission to commence unloading their cargo. This humanitarian effort is critical, given warnings from the United Nations and partners about the looming risk of famine in the devastated and largely isolated northern Gaza, potentially occurring as early as this month. Humanitarian officials emphasize that sea and air deliveries alone are insufficient, urging Israel to permit more aid to reach Gaza by road. The recent delivery by sea is part of ongoing efforts with the previous ship convoy this month delivering 200 tons of food, water, and other aid to the region. The context of this aid becomes more urgent against the backdrop of nearly 6 months of conflict that has ravaged critical infrastructure in Gaza. This destruction includes hospitals, schools, homes, roads, sewage systems, and the electrical grid. According to reports from the United Nations and international aid agencies, over 80% of Gaza's 2.3 million population has been displaced. The conflict began with Hamas attack on southern Israel on October 7th, resulting in the loss of lives and significant civilian casualties. Israel responded with a comprehensive offensive involving air, land, and sea operations. The toll of this conflict has been immense, with Gaza's health ministry reporting at least 32,845 Palestinians killed since the offensive began. The ministry's count does not differentiate between civilians and combatants, but notes that women and children constitute around 2/3 of those killed. On the other hand, the Israeli military claims to have targeted over 13,000 Hamas fighters, although evidence supporting this assertion is not provided. Israeli authorities attribute the civilian casualties to Palestinian militants, arguing that they operate within densely populated residential areas.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast for Mongolia and the world major cities. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you on Wednesday with more news and updates. Goodbye.